when I have wanted to go off track, when I've wanted to deviate, I've found myself in a position where I inherently feel the need to rationalize. And I think that's where like it's important to get very clear on the vernacular here. There's like rationalization, there's justification. Difference is rationalization. Some of what you're saying you might not fully believe in. Like you are really going to lengths to make it to where whatever action you're demonstrating or whatever decision you made is validated. Whereas justifying, maybe you do explain yourself. Maybe you do tell yourself like, well, this is why I'm doing it out of convenience. But with rationalizing, there is this essence of kind of tricking yourself. I would say like, creating this idea that this had to happen, even if you yourself don't really believe it. And you think over time, you do this enough. I certainly did it enough. People get into these habits where it almost becomes second nature to be like, oh, well, I have to do this because of da-da-da. And like, you don't even realize that like, you don't have that conflict internally, even though you are kind of like co-opting, you're tricking yourself into thinking, well, this is all I can do. And I don't think this in itself is disordered. I think it is very like socially acceptable right now. And it's very much a part of like fitness culture to like explain yourself. And then just frankly, like, it's something like if you're new to dieting, new to tracking, like you might just simply be excited about like what you're doing and want to share it with the person you're with. But I find this like need, this compulsion to explain your decisions around food. I find it, yes, to be common, but I think it's particularly common when you're doing the opposite of what you perceive like those around you would consider like the right thing or like the predictable behavior. So I'll tell you a story. For instance, with a group of friends, all in like, like kind of a co-living situation, a lot of guys, and they like, one of them was dieting. He was, he was in a fat loss phase, but I could tell like he wasn't like, I don't think any of us had a scale. But he like inherently would have like a little additions here and there. And like, I remember one of the, other guys with us was like, oh, like, is that a part of your diet? Cause the guy was following a meal plan and he's like, no, but my energy is super low. Like I need to have something. And that kind of became the running joke, like in his case, cause like other times he'd be like, he'd have like dessert, but then dessert plus he would have like a couple bites of this. And like, whatever. In this environment, he very much was like, people were poking fun because they're like, yeah, like you're supposed to be dieting and you talk a big game. Like, what are you doing? And every time, like never fail, there was an excuse. And I've seen this to be the case with athletes as well, with clients I work with, except the difference is this isn't like more of a social setting. This is straight like just reporting of behaviors for the week. Like they are checking in with me and letting me know like, hey, this is how the week went. And historically, I have allowed adherence to be more like ambiguous and be like, well, how do you feel about what you ate? Like I did that bullshit for a long time. Now I straight up have like, I have dietary deviations, like deviations from what we agreed upon. And I think like people can get really, they can have strong feelings about me saying like, well, like if you're off track, you're off track. Like being very objective with like your adherence, it can be upsetting to some people because I don't think that they realize how non-adherent they're actually being. And I think even more specific to this, it can be upsetting to confront the truth, which is like you are avoiding how adherent you actually are on like a scaling criteria. You're avoiding that because if you saw that, you would have very little room to complain about not seeing the progress that you say you want to see. This is cognitive dissonance, is when like there's a distinct difference between what you say you want and your behaviors. When we look at someone who's like, hey, like I'm miserable, and they complain all the time about like they don't like how they look, they don't like how their clothes feel, they don't like how they feel, but they continue to do things that make it harder on them to lose weight or even cause them to gain weight. That's where there's this distinct discrepancy in really someone's behavior versus, what they perceive is a goal. And I would say like it truly isn't really a goal because they're not willing to modify behaviors in order to get closer to that goal. So like you take someone who objectively is at a higher body fat. And this doesn't have to be like, this isn't body shaming, this isn't fat shaming. This could be just a competitor who maybe has overshot and like their goal was to stay at a certain body fat percentage, maybe in their off season, and then they find like, hey, I'm higher than I initially anticipated, and I feel it. Like, it is not muscle, is very much unfavorable weight gain, unwanted, unavoidable weight gain. Well, in the case where like this person has voiced this to their peers, and in the same instance where this is the individual that overeats, makes decisions in doing something that goes against what they initially said their goal was. When you think about it, it's like, if you had to justify every single one of your decisions and like you had to argue it, like good and bad, I feel like it would be very, and not even just stopping there, but like going as far as to even like itemize, like how many of these rationalizations, how many of these sticking points are you allowing laxity in your decisions around being on track or not being on track?